Timeline move. So this is something I want to cover real quick. I sort of blazed past this, but it wasn't obvious what I needed to do to get something to lerp. So the main thing that we'll need to lerp is the camera for now, but we're also going to need to lerp some other things. This was a custom event that I created to abstract some of the extra stuff that you have to keep up with when it comes to using timelines. The main issue with them is this. Okay, so watch. If I double click on this guy, it just says reading C++ symbols. But if you double click on this guy, you get a whole new editor to deal with. And this, like finding this was a huge surprise. I was like, what is this? So there's some neat things about it. Like, it's a curve editor, so you can also save your own curves. I think you could, I haven't messed with it, but I'm pretty sure you could generate these on the fly as well. The drawbacks are obviously that this is hidden. Like you don't know it's there, so that's a little obnoxious. In the editor, I don't know. Maybe there's a hint that I'm just not getting from this, like, hey, come in here, sort of invitation, but I don't really see it. It could just be the color yellow that I just should start looking out for. I should double click on anything that's yellow. I'm not really certain, but um, yeah. So, anyways, there's this timeline lerp, um, and so you can set up your curve now to play through that lerp, because the way that these work is you have a value that you start with, and so if we look at this, it's going to start at 0, and then it'll end at 1, and over time it will shift at a certain rate, and that's what the curve is, right? So usually we use this for interpolation, and it's great for animation. Now, we got to find the right graph. Okay. Now, the biggest complexity or caveat that I ran into with this is that they retain their state. So whenever you go to play it, it will remember where it was at. So it's kind of like I had to have a event that allowed me to like force it to reset. So there's a number of things I have to do to like turn off the controls so that the player and the mouse are not interfering with this animation. But then let me see. Set play rate, timeline component, timeline lerp move. I'm trying to find it. So there's a variable here which is referencing this. I'm trying to figure out how did I do that? Yeah. Okay. So when you add a timeline, so let me do this live real quick. Timeline move, is that? No, that's me. Timeline lerp. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, this was the other thing. Like, how do you create this? Let me find that real quick. All right. Yeah. Here it is. Oh, I clicked off and now it's gone. So at the bottom here in timeline, it has add timeline. All right, so what I didn't notice, as soon as you add it, it shows up on the left. So here I just put my timeline and look at that. There's a component now. So now you have this thing all of a sudden, and you can manipulate this. It has its own, so like setting the play rate, for example. So if I want to alter the speed, this is how you manipulate that. Because those settings don't exist in this big old box. You think it would, but it doesn't. So there's probably other things that I haven't even messed with yet. Like maybe like there is a reverse execution in there, which is nice. But um, I'm sure that there's more things to plunder here that I haven't touched. But for now, I only needed the play rate, and so you can do that. Um, so with this branch, what this is detecting is if it's already happening. And so if it is already happening, then I'll just keep playing, I suppose, from where it's at. But then if it's not, then it'll play from start. And that took me a while to figure out. This was kind of the big secret sauce, is you have to track, is it already playing? And so that's what this set does. And if something else happens that triggers another timeline, I want to keep using this from where it was at, because it's like it's in the middle of the animation, so I'll just switch directions. And so that works out. So far it's worked out nicely. I haven't had any issues with that. Um, yeah, so on update, we're going to set the actor location. And this lerp vector here is just going to be where the position is at. So we have a starting position from and to, and that's a whole other thing I'm going to go over as well. And then it'll translate eventually to location B, and so it'll just keep calling set actor location as this runs. So I think the other thing to consider here is a timeline automatically has its own tick. So normally, if you're going to do, I have some things that I animate in event tick, not much. I try, it what you can do in here is a little bit more limited or complex, and you kind of want to keep things out of the event tick if possible, because it's just, puts more pressure on the on your loop, your game loop. So, if it's just an event, it doesn't need to be in the tick. So once we fire it, it has its own kind of internal loop that it runs through, and so that's how this is getting updated over time. And then once we're done on finish, we'll turn this off, and then I'll turn the player controls back on. And so that is it. This is the custom method I made to handle that complexity. Some of this is specific to me, right? Like my own notion of player controls needing to be turned off. That's not necessarily going to be an issue for every timeline move, but there might be things that you want to turn off, like other animations and stuff. And this could kind of be a template for that, where you turn this guy on and off at the beginning and end. But this core portion here feels like, it should be baked into the timeline, like there should be a timeline move or something, but I think it's because timelines are more generic. It's not specific to location switching or animation and stuff. So yeah, so that is the timeline itself. Now getting the vector position, let's see. This is here. Yeah, there are two, I guess I can look at this a couple of ways. So we have the select action, which is basically like clicking or pressing the X button, or what do they call them? Face buttons, face button down. I use a PlayStation 3 controller to this day, even though I play mostly Nintendo and PC, but I like the feel of a PlayStation controller. So it's the X button on mine, but it could be the A button on an Xbox or a B button on Nintendo, or they'll in Unreal they say face button down. So when you press that, it will see if it is a vaporgram. If it is, then it will. And I put this do once in here so that it doesn't spam the attempt to create timeline. So there's kind of a double protection there. It may not be necessary. Um, but what it'll do, and this was important, was getting lerp vectors from mesh component. So I made this long function name to specify that we're getting it from the mesh component, because when I initially created it, I was getting it from actor, and that did not work. So I abstracted it away. So there's two different ones. So this is from mesh component, and it's get world transform. So this guy is a mesh component object reference, and specifically, cannot emphasize enough, get world transform. That's it. That's the thing that'll get it to work. And then from there, we can do the get lerp vectors. But let me see. Get lerp vectors target self from to. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because just using plain get lerp vectors, I think originally I changed this, but it has this get actor transform, which is different. And so it's different from the mesh because of how we have to move it. There's some peculiarity with blueprints in the scene root, and so this retains some kind of position that isn't immutable, and then the actual children like cursor and collision are being transformed and moved as we go, and so that's what's happening somehow. And so like if you try to just get the actor, it actually grabs this, which ends up being its original spawn location. And so I've been confused by this still, because it seems to work in some cases and not in others. So a bit of a mystery, but ultimately making sure that I do it this way, where I get the transform, and I've abstracted it out a little bit, so I can just, if this does work. So we want to just keep the Z from the actor. Still, we don't want to mess with the level, but like the height, I mean. So that is that's the magic to get the animation to lerp, which is, those are UI animations, so those don't count. But it is to, I think it's to lerp the camera, actually. Yeah, so whenever we do this, so if I'm like off to the side and I click on it, the camera will smoothly move to this location. And that's really it. If you don't do that, if you don't do the lerp, you try and use their transform, it just like teleports, which I can't even fake that. Okay, and that's it for this reminder.